Introduction. Ury starts the book with a very profound statement. "We're not born knowing how to choose the right partner," she wrote. This is what she set out to do with the book. The book shares her blueprint of how to love effectively, what she calls intentional love. As she wrote in the book, great relationships are built, not discovered. Great relationships are a combination of making all the right choices and doing all the right things when it should be done. Section 1. Getting ready. In this section, which contains 7 chapters, she talks about why dating has become harder now than it has ever been in human history. She also talks about what she calls dating blind spots, things that are holding you back from having a great love relationship without you even knowing it. And finally, she delves into attachment styles and the role they play in adult relationships. Chapter 1. Why dating is harder now than ever before. In this chapter, Ury gave several reasons why dating is harder now than it has ever been. 1. We shape our own identities. A few factors such as religious beliefs, community, and social class decided who your ancestors married. Today we can create our own identities by choosing who to marry, and this ability to create our own identities have created a problem of not knowing what directions to take. 2. We have too many options. According to Ury, dating started in the 1890s and online dating started in 1994. And since then, things have really moved fast. We have too many options today that we don't even know which to choose. What psychologists call the paradox of choice. 3. We yearn for certainty. According to Ury, because we live in an era that provides information at our beck and call, we want to make sure we make lots of research in order to maximize our options. Which goes back to the last point of how too many choices have crippled our ability to make a choice and be happy with it. 4. Social media leads us to compare and despair. Your ancestors didn't know what the love lives of people in faraway villages looked like. Today, you know what the love life of millions around the world look like because it's all being displayed on social media. As she wrote in the book, social media makes it feel like we are the only ones that are facing problems in our relationship. 5. We lack relationship role models. As she stated clearly in the book, it's easier to believe something can be done when you see people around you doing it successfully. With the divorce rates at an all-time high, how do we have great marriages when all we are exposed to is divorce and broken relationships? 6. There are far more ways to be in a relationship today. Your ancestors didn't know that it was possible to be having regular sex with someone without being in a relationship with them, what we call hooking up today. Today we are free to be in a relationship however way we want it. And this freedom is starting to make us feel overwhelmed and confused as to what we really want. 7. We feel pressure to get this decision right. Because of our exposure today, we feel like our entire life rests on getting it right when it comes to relationship, especially for women who, due to biological reasons, need to get it right if they want to have children at a certain age. Chapter 2. The 3 dating tendencies. Ury believes we all have what she calls dating blind spots, patterns of behavior that hold us back from finding love, but which we can't identify on our own. She categorized these blind spots into what she calls the 3 dating tendencies. This chapter is just like an introduction to these dating tendencies, as each of them are detailed in the chapters that follow. 1. The romanticizers. This group of people believe that love will happen when it is meant to happen. 2. The maximizers. This group of people want to explore all their options and make sure the person they end up with is the best option for them. 3. The hesitators. These groups of people are never ready to settle down or date. They are buried in constant self-improvement. Each of these groups battle with various unrealistic expectations. The romanticizers have unrealistic expectations of relationships. The maximizers have unrealistic expectations of their partner. And the hesitators have unrealistic expectations of themselves. Chapter 3. Disney lied to us. This chapter deals with how to overcome the romanticizer tendency. As Ury wrote, romanticizers believe that love is something that happens to you, and that the reason they're single is they just haven't met the right person yet. They seem to believe in fairy tales. And there are a few problems with fairy tales or having this romanticizer tendency. 1. The first problem this tendency creates is it affects the way they approach finding a partner. She told the story of a woman who always dressed her best whenever she went on a flight because she believed she could meet her future husband on a plane. And then while on the plane, She refuses to start up any conversation for fear of being seen as trying too hard. This belief that love is something that happens to you makes them passive when finding a partner. 2. This mindset influences whom they are willing to go out with. People who believe in soul mates always have this vision of what their soul's mate must look like. Because of this, they filter out every potential partner without this exact same qualities. There is more to people than meets the eyes, so sometimes they miss out on great romantic partners. As she further explained, romanticizers aren't the only ones with this idea that love or marriage should be so interesting that it looks like a fairy tale. The reason for this is because throughout a larger part of our history, people didn't marry for love. People married strictly for economic purposes. Back then, love was something people did in secret by having affairs. So it came with passion and intense emotions. It wasn't until around 1750 that the idea of marrying for love began to be normalized. And this was ushered in by what is known as the Age of Romanticism. This was an ideological movement that began in Europe. And even today, our ideas about love is rooted in Romanticism. For example, Romanticism believes that love happens naturally. It believes that people who are truly in love never fall out of love. It believes that once we meet our soul mate, it will be the end of our sadness. And lots more. How to fight back against the ideals of Romanticism. 1. Stop believing that the perfect person for you is out there waiting to sweep you off your feet. Cultivate a work-it-out mindset. This means you should give people a chance and try to put in the work to make your relationships work. Stop all that, if it was meant to be, it will be nonsense. 2. Stop believing in the happily ever after myth. Love is work, and couples fight sometimes. As Ury stated clearly in the book, no relationship is easy all the time. Even the healthiest, most rewarding marriages require effort. 3. Stop believing in what Ury calls rom-coms meet cute. This is the idea that you must meet the love of your life in a unique way. The way it happens in movies. Love can happen anywhere and anytime. Be open to it. Stop waiting to fall in love in story-worthy way. 4. Learn to ignore social media. Love isn't all exotic vacations, giving of gifts, and having explosive sex, the way it's portrayed on social media. As she stated in the book, relationships go through periods of highs and lows, and love is so much more than a filtered photo captured at sunset. Chapter 4. Don't let perfect be the enemy of great. This chapter focuses on how to overcome the maximizer tendency. According to Ury, maximizers obsess over making the best possible decision. They feel compelled to explore every possible option before they feel like they can make a choice. And then there is another type of perfectionist that Ury calls satisficers. These are people who, unlike maximizers, have standards, but they aren't overly concerned that there might be something better out there. They know their criteria, and they hunt until they find the good enough option. It's not that they settle. They're simply fine making a decision once they've gathered some evidence and identified a satisfactory option. Maximizers believe that in relationships, if they can date a good number of people, they would eventually find the perfect one for themselves. But the problem is they never do, because there's an endless number of people to date. One of the explanations that Ury gave for why maximizers are the way they are is that they might be battling with what she calls FOMOD, the fear of making the wrong decision. Remember we said earlier that your ancestors didn't have the option of having too many people to choose from. So when they made a choice like marrying the guy next door, they didn't have to stay awake at night worrying if they could have chosen better. But today our option seems endless, and because of this, many are crippled by analysis paralysis. The problem with maximizing. One of the downsides is that even if you eventually make a choice, and the choice you made seemed to be the best among the best, you still might not be happy with your choice. That mindset that there's always someone better out there would ruin your chances of happiness. The wisdom of satisficing. Unlike maximizers, satisficers make use of a powerful tool, which is the brain, to be happy with any choice they make. Whenever we commit to something, over time our brain works towards making us feel like we made the best choice. This is called rationalization, our ability to convince ourselves we did the right thing. As she noted, it's not that satisficers don't have very high standards. The difference is, once they find something that meets their standards, they are happy with it. Unlike maximizers who want to turn over every stone before they make a decision. So it's not as if satisficers settle for less than they want and maximizers don't know. Satisficers use rationalization to stay contented. Be a satisficer. The secretary problem. According to Ury, if you're a maximizer, you can learn to date like a satisficer by using this riddle called the secretary problem. Imagine if you're to hire a secretary, and there are 100 persons for you to interview. But there's a catch. Any person you interview, and don't pick the first time, is gone. This means you don't have the luxury of interviewing all 100 candidates before making a choice. So how do you pick the best candidate? There's a mathematical way to solve this problem, and that is interview 37 persons out of the 100 candidates, then pause. Reflect on who was the best candidate out of the 37 persons, and then the next person you interview who you think is better than that person is who you should hire. You don't necessarily need to interview all 100. Use that one person out of the 37% as a benchmark. So how do you apply this to your dating life? Here's how. Let's say you're a young man who intend to get married someday, and assuming you begin to date at age 18, and your search for a partner is likely to run from ages 18 to 40, the 37% of that is age 26. This means by the time you're 26, you should look back at all the girls you have dated and liked. Pick the one girl you think was better than all of them and use her as a benchmark. Whenever you meet any other girl that you think is better than that girl, marry the person. The secretary problem is a brilliant idea, and if used well would save you lots of regrets as a maximizer. Chapter 5. Don't wait, date. This chapter is focused on how to overcome the hesitated tendency. Everybody constantly wants to improve themselves in one area or the other. But for hesitators, they allow this proclivity for constant improvement to become an impediment for making any choice when it gets to their romantic relationships. Hesitators are the ones who always use the quest for becoming better as an excuse for not committing. It's not that there is anything wrong with wanting to become better, but as Ury noted, when you wait to date, you're missing out on more than you think. Economists often refer to this as the opportunity cost of decisions, the price you pay when you choose one option over another. For example, if you decide to focus on getting a new car before you begin to date, your opportunity cost is the number of potential partners that you miss out on during that time period. According to Ury, being a hesitator comes with so many drawbacks. 1. You miss out on the opportunity to learn. If you're not going on dates, how do you get closer to knowing the kind of person you want to be with long term? How do you choose your 37% benchmark? Remember the secretary problem from the last chapter? 2. Getting in your dating reps. As Ury wrote, a rep is a single movement of an exercise. At the gym, you get stronger by doing multiple reps of a particular exercise. In dating, you get stronger by going on more dates. When you go on more dates, you hone your storytelling and listening skills. Ury gave several ways through which you can overcome your hesitation and start dating. 1. Make a deadline. According to Ury, deadlines are one of the most efficient ways to motivate someone to take action, and short deadlines work especially well. Ury believes 3 weeks is a good enough time frame, as it gives you the time for all the necessary preparation. 2. Prep. Ury says, once you've set the deadline, start doing the pre-dating work. Download the dating apps. I would also add that you should send that DM today. Make that call, send that text. Get a good outfit for dates. That's how you prepare to date. 3. Tell others. Science has shown that we are often more committed to carrying out an action when we have told others about it. Ury advises that tell 2 to 3 of your closest friends or family members that you're going to start dating. You'll feel more motivated to act once you've made this public pronouncement because now your reputation is on the line. 4. Commit to your new identity. Remember we said earlier from a previous chapter that mindset plays a huge role in how events turn out in our lives? Begin to see yourself as someone who's qualified to date. Speak positively to yourself. Ury even encourages you to look in the mirror every day, smile, and call yourself a dater. 5. Start small. You don't need to go on several dates a week for a start. Start with one bi-weekly or weekly and improve from there. 6. Be compassionate with yourself. Breaking a habit isn't something that's easy, so don't beat yourself too hard. Just make sure you're making some progress. And then finally, stop talking to your ex or exes. Experts say that talking to an ex when you haven't really gotten over them worsens your psychological health. As Ury noted, keeping your ex around as a potential love interest turns your breakup into a changeable decision. Stop talking to your ex. In fact, stop having sex with your ex. Sex always makes it difficult to let go. Chapter 6. Learn your attachment style. This chapter explores how to manage your attachment style. The first person who came up with the idea of attachment in the field of psychology was John Bowlby. Later, this idea was improved upon by the psychologist Mary Ainsworth through her now famous experiment called the strange situation. Here's how the experiment went. First, a mother and a baby enters a room filled with lots of toys. So the baby begins to play with the toys because why not? The mother is there. She serves as what Mary calls a secure base, someone to call upon when problem arises. Then they move to the interesting part of the experiment. The mother is asked to leave the room, and the reaction of each child is monitored. When the mother leaves, several of the children reacted in various ways. Some of the children showed signs of distress as soon as their mother left. When she returned, these babies would be temporarily soothed and stop crying, but then angrily push the mother away and begin crying again. Ainsworth called these babies anxiously attached. Then there were other children who cried when their mother left but stopped as soon as she returned. They quickly resumed playing. These were the securely attached babies. The third group of babies did not respond to their mother leaving the room, nor did they even acknowledge her when she came back. They pretended they weren't bothered by the situation, even though they were. These were called the avoidantly attached babies. Years later, experts would say that these various responses to the absence of a secure base has great consequences for adult relationships. For example, people who are anxiously attached are the ones who can send a dozen texts within an hour when their partner doesn't return a text or call a gazillion times within the same period. According to Ury, those who possess this anxious attachment style often act out in order to get their partner's attention, while the avoidantly attached, on the other hand, are the ones who are afraid of committing. They always find a way to pull away when the relationship begins to get serious. They deceive themselves by looking for excuses, such as their partner's flaws, to justify this behavior. And then the securely attached are the ones who are trustworthy in a relationship. They avoid unnecessary drama. They know how to communicate their needs to their partners without quarreling. They don't gaslight, they're consistent. This is the best attachment style to have. At this point, I have good news and bad news, but first the good news. It is said that 50% of the population is made up of people who are securely attached, and the remaining 50% is divided between the avoidantly attached and the anxiously attached. Here's the bad news. At any given time, the number of securely attached people in the dating pool is very little. The reason is because these people know how to make relationships work, so they get picked out quickly. So most times the majority of people in the dating pool are the anxiously and avoidantly attached. They date each other and keep bringing out the worst parts of themselves. That's why it's said that at any given time the dating pool is always a mess. So before you walk out of your current relationship, make sure things are really not working out between you both. If not, the next person waiting for you in the dating pool might be worse. Ury advises that inasmuch as it's hard, try your best to look for a secure partner if you know you are anxiously or avoidantly attached. One thing Ury also mentioned in the book is that people can change their attachment style, but it takes some time. One way to do this is to become very self-aware and learn how to self-regulate. Chapter 7. Look for a partner, not a prom date. This chapter discusses how to focus on what matters in a long-term partner. According to Ury, one of the mistakes many people make when looking for a long-term partner is that they focus on superficial qualities. And this happens because of a bias we have as humans. Psychologists call it the present bias. This bias makes us to place a huge value on the present and discount the future. As Ury noted, most people don't date for long-term viability. For example, if I ask you what you want in a potential partner, you would be quick to mention money, good looks, shares the same hobbies, and a personality similar to yours. You wouldn't mention things like loyalty or kindness. And the reason is because of another bias called the focusing illusion. The focusing illusion makes us to overestimate the importance of certain factors when anticipating outcomes. For example, because money is very important in relationships, you might think that once a partner has money, that's all that matters for a relationship to work. This is especially true for women. There are several videos online of ladies who say they would rather stay with a rich, abusive man than an average man who treats them well. What these ladies forget is that people get adapted to things over time, and after a certain amount, money actually doesn't add to a person's happiness. It's the same with good looks too. Over time, you would get used to the beauty of your spouse. As the saying goes, for every attractive person you see, there's someone who's already tired of having sex with them. According to Ury, there are some qualities that matters more than we think. 1. Emotional stability and kindness. Instead of always optimizing for the present, learn to optimize for the future. One way you can do that is by looking for a partner who is emotionally stable and kind. According to Ury, emotional stability is being able to self-regulate and not give in to anger or impulsivity. 2. Loyalty. Look for a partner who would have your back anytime, any day. Relationships aren't all about great sex. Life can come at you very hard and fast. When the chips are down, will your partner still be loyal to you the way they were when everything was good? As she said in the book, look for a partner who would hold your purse in a cancer clinic. Cancer clinic here is a metaphor for when things go bad for you. 3. A growth mindset. The psychologist Carol Dweck popularized the idea of the growth and fixed mindset. Someone with a growth mindset believes that people can improve through self-development, while someone with a fixed mindset believes the opposite. As Ury wrote in the book, you want to align yourself with someone who has a growth mindset because when problems arise, you'll want a partner who will rise to the occasion, not throw up their hands in defeat. 4. Personality that brings out the best in you. What do you like when you're with your partner? As Ury made clear, you must understand what qualities your partner brings out in you, because this is who you'll be whenever you're with them. 5. Skills to fight well. Disagreements would often come up in your relationship. Make sure you're with someone with whom every disagreement doesn't escalate into a full-blown argument. 6. The ability to make hard decisions. Life isn't a bed of roses. At some point, you will be faced with some important life decisions. Make sure you're with someone with whom you can make big decisions. Someone who you can trust their judgment and navigate life with. As Ury advised, the best way to figure this out is to actually make hard decisions together. Section 2. Getting out there. In this section, which has 5 chapters, Ury talks about how to use dating apps the right way. She goes in depth on how to find ways to meet people in person if you feel the apps aren't helping you meet potential partners, and several other interesting tips to help you find love. Chapter 8. You think you know what you want, but you're wrong. What she aimed to do with this chapter is to show her readers how to avoid the pitfalls of online dating. She opened the chapter with the story of how she swiped left on her current partner on Tinder because she didn't think he was the kind of guy she was looking for. As she wrote, "I thought I knew what I wanted, and I believed I could accurately evaluate someone based on a few photos. I was wrong on both counts." In the last 20 years, digital dating has exploded. Its explosion came with several downsides. These dating apps can also perpetuate harmful cognitive biases among their users. As she wrote, behavioral scientists have established that environment matters. We're highly affected by the setting in which we make decisions, whether that's a physical location or a digital landscape. When it comes to modern dating, our decision-making environment is the dating app, and we're affected by the way the app presents certain matches and the order in which those matches appear on our screens. Apps have introduced millions of happy couples who may not have met otherwise. But unfortunately, the way that certain dating apps present information can cause us to focus on the wrong things. In the remaining part of the chapter, she focused on teaching you how to make the apps work for you. We're dating wrong. Here are some of the ways she says these dating apps affects us. Issue 1. Our brains focus on what's measurable and easily comparable. All dating apps display superficial traits, and this makes us value these qualities even more. In an earlier chapter, she established that what we should seek for in a relationship are qualities like loyalty, kindness, and emotional stability. Dating apps don't give us the opportunity to pick people based on these kinds of qualities. Rather, it gives us the opportunity to only choose people based on superficial qualities. Qualities like height, age, job, the college a person attended, and a whole lot of things that really doesn't tell who a person really is. And this, as she said, has created a serious problem. Human beings are suggestible. Show us a metric and we'll assume it's important. Today, qualities that aren't supposed to be seen as important are what we value the most and optimize for, because these are the qualities that these dating apps focus on measuring. Take height, for example. We all know women like tall men, but the digital world exacerbates this preference because it's a quality that the apps focus on. Apps make it easy to compare height. And as she explained, the more a quality can be compared, the more important that trait seems. As she wrote, the apps may trick us into valuing these superficial traits while ignoring the qualities that relationship science tells is most important. Issue 2. We think we know what we want, but we're wrong. Most of us have no idea what kind of partner that would make us happy in the long term. But the problem is dating apps never give us the chance to be proved wrong, because we can weed out people who we think aren't our type. In essence, the apps allow us to filter out great potential matches. Dating apps have an onboarding process that helps us narrow down our options from the beginning. For example, we are asked, what's the youngest person you'd date? What's the oldest? What's the tallest or shortest person you'd date? Do you care if this person smokes? It's okay for dating apps to help us limit our options using our preferences because we can't actually meet everybody. Also, we are always free to change our preferences anytime we want, but we don't because of the status quo bias. Once people set app preferences during onboarding, they're very unlikely to change them. And because of this, we miss out on meeting potential great partners. Issue 3. Apps promote relations hopping, searching for potential partners like potential purchases. Ury wrote, many of us conduct extensive research before making a purchase. Dating apps create the illusion that we can do the same comparison shopping with potential partners. But treating potential partners like potential purchases gets us into trouble. Many consumer items are searchable goods. Things like detergent and big-screen TVs can be measured based on their objective attributes. These are different from experience goods, which are judged by the feelings they evoke, rather than the functions they perform. And human beings are experience goods. You cannot understand people and know who they are simply by measuring their objective attributes. Yet dating apps make us see people as searchable goods. Apps primarily give us a list of resumed traits and nothing more. But only by spending time with someone can we appreciate them for the experiential good they are. Issue 4. Apps make us more indecisive about whom to date. The author wrote that the first night she downloaded Tinder, she spent 6 hours swiping. And that's because the more options we are presented with, the more difficult it is to make a decision. Our brains aren't set up to select a partner from so many options. As the psychologist Barry Schwartz explained, too many options make us less happy, in part because of choice overload. It's not just that too many choices make it hard to decide. Schwartz also explains that even when we're able to overcome choice overload and make a selection, having so many options to choose from makes us less satisfied with what we choose. Remember, Ury wrote extensively on the various dating tendencies in Chapter 4, and talked about the maximizer tendency. When we are faced with too many choices, we start to think, what if I'd chosen something else? Would that have been better? Would I be happier? That train of thought leads down a dark path toward regret. This can even lead to feelings of depression. As Ury affirmed, the point of a dating app is to go out on an actual date, not to spend all of your evenings swiping. Issue 5. When we see only a rough sketch of someone, we fill in the gaps with flattering details. Dating apps makes us create an unrealistic fantasy of people, which ultimately leaves us disappointed. People usually seem more desirable than they actually are. It's only later, when they transform into real people standing in front of us, that we see the flaws. This can create a grass is always greener mindset. You always think the next person will be better than what you have, not knowing you're dooming yourself to an endless cycle of unrealized expectations. Date smarter. Here, Ury gave a better approach on how to make dating apps work in your favor. 1. Change your filters. Most people never change their preferences on these apps. Remember, the people you see on the apps are a reflection of the restrictions you set up when you joined. Go back and make the necessary changes you want. 2. Change how you swipe. She gave an example of a client of hers who swiped left on a good-looking guy just because he was a consultant. When she asked the client why she swiped left, she said, "Consultants are boring." Crazy, isn't it? Because she probably went on a date with one consultant who was boring. She had decided that every other consultant she would ever come across would be boring. As Ury buttressed, be open to the fact that someone may be far more interesting in person than a profile suggests. 3. Don't go out with too many people at the same time. It's easy to keep swiping and setting up dates. And that's because most of these dating apps were designed to get you addicted. For example, many believe Tinder was designed to get you addicted. Tinder was inspired partly by psychology experiments. Try not to play the apps like a game. You'll make better decisions if you pace yourself and go out with a limited number of people at once and really get to know them. How to work the apps so they work for you. 1. Select great photos. Photos matter. You want to present yourself as best as possible. She gave some tips on how to select a great photo. When picking a picture, don't create any guessing games about what you look like or if you're single. Pictures with filters or where you have other people in the picture receive 90% fewer likes than those without. Women see around a 70% boost in their chances of getting a like simply by including photos where they're standing alone, looking away, or smiling with teeth. Men see a boost in their chances of getting a like by standing alone, smiling without teeth, and looking straight toward the camera. Can it outperform pose photos? Selfies perform poorly, especially bathroom selfies. Black and white photos are also great. 2. Write a thoughtful profile. Ury explained that it's important to present yourself accurately. Your profile should represent who you're presently. Your profile should be able to spark conversations. Make sure your profile creates opportunities for people to follow up and connect. The best way to spark conversation is to be specific. Include unique things that make you stand out. For example, if you write that you like music, it sounds too generic. But if you mention the kind of music you like or your favorite band, that would tell more about you. When writing your profile, also focus on what you like, not what you don't. 3. Craft your opening line. When reaching out to potential partners, use great opening lines. For example, don't ask people how their weekend was. That's boring. Good opening lines are specific. Look at the profile and comment on something subtle, a detail that not everyone would notice. 4. Stay in touch. No matter how busy you're, always try to respond to messages. 5. Cut to the chase. Don't spend all your time texting or calling. Get to the actual date as quickly as you can. As Ury wrote, a good transition from texting to a date might sound like this. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Want to continue it over a walk on Sunday afternoon? The point is to try to meet in person as soon as you can. Chapter 9. Meet people IRL in real life. In this chapter, Ury focuses on helping her readers find love off the dating apps. She gave several tips on how to meet people in real life, outside of dating apps. 1. Go to events. Going to events is a great way to meet potential partners in person. Go to events where you'll interact with other people in person. Research from psychology has shown that publicly committing to a goal makes people more likely to accomplish what they set out to do. So make your commitment public. You can tell a friend to hold you accountable. Deadlines are also powerful. Create deadline on when next you will attend an event. There are various ways you can find interesting events. You can ask friends or keep an eye on Facebook pages of organizations you find interesting. How to make the most of events. First, it's ideal to go events alone. This would allow you to be able to meet people without feeling drawn back by a partner. When you meet people, introduce yourself. Say something to the people nearby about what's happening around you. As a lady, don't worry about making the first move. Most men are thrilled to be approached by a woman. And men, don't be worried about coming off as creepy. Talking to a stranger at an event is not inherently creepy. 2. Get set up by friends and family. According to research from Stanford, the third most common way for people to meet each other, behind meeting online and at bars or restaurants, is through friends. Take advantage of this. Your friends and family are great resources because they both know you well and know people you don't. Here are some ways you can get more people to set you up on dates. 1. Ask people to set you up. 2. Tell them what you're looking for. 3. Send your friends some photos. 4. Say yes to dates. 5. Give your friends feedback. 6. Offer incentives for friends who set you up on dates. 3. Connect with people you already know. As Ury wrote, sometimes your person is hiding in plain sight. This might be a friend of a friend. All you have to do is see this person in a new light. If you decide to try this approach, understand that it could backfire. If you try it and the person doesn't feel the way you feel, respect their boundaries. There are several ways you can start the conversation without sounding awkward. For example, you could say something like, "Have you ever considered if we could be more than friends?" Or a crazy thought, "I wonder what we'd be like as a married couple." If they're interested, they'll follow you down this conversational path and tell you what you need to know. Or they may not see you that way. Regardless, it's worth bringing up. If they're not interested, what's the worst that could happen? Make a joke and move on. 4. Introduce yourself to people when you're out and about. Say hi to a stranger, but don't harass strangers in public. Test the waters. When you approach someone, see if they are open to chatting by commenting on something around you or asking a question. If they're not interested, leave them alone. Chapter 10. This is a date, not a job interview. In this chapter, Ury expands on how to create better dates. Going on a date isn't enough. It's important you make the best of the date. Environment matters. When we go on dates, we're impacted by more than just the physical location of where we meet. The environment of a date is also when we meet, what we do, and the mindset we bring to it. A date is not a networking meeting or a job interview. You should not conduct yourself the same way you do at work. If you sit through a date trying to evaluate the other person and your own reaction, you're not present. Your date can't get a good sense of who you are, and you aren't present enough to experience the moment, let alone enjoy it. The point of the first date isn't to decide if you want to marry someone or not. It's to see if you're curious about the person, if you feel like you would enjoy spending more time together. 10 steps to designing better dates. 1. Shift your mindset with a pre-date ritual. The mindset you have towards your date is very important because your mindset doesn't just set the mood for your date, it can also determine the outcome. Whether you believe the date will go well or poorly, you are right. Before every date, always try to shift your mindset to expect great dates. To help you do this, design a pre-date ritual. This is something you'll do before every date to get you in the right headspace. It could be calling one of your closest friends or someone who makes you feel confident and loved. 2. Choose the time and place of the date thoughtfully. You don't want your dates to feel like a networking meeting. Pick a place where the both of you would feel relaxed. Also, during a date, try sitting next to, rather than across from, your date. It's easier to talk when we're not looking someone in the eyes. Eye contact and processing language rely on the same neural circuitry. 3. Opt for a creative activity. Go on dates where you can do fun and creative things together. This brings in what Ury calls a third object. It makes awkward silence a bit less awkward. You guys can have something to talk about. If you can, go on dates where you can watch your companion interact with others. This is a great way to get a sense of those hard-to-measure qualities that are so important, like kindness. 4. Show your work. This simply means trying to put an effort into the date. One great way to show your effort is to offer to plan the date or to choose a place near the other person's home or work. People will appreciate the effort, and your thoughtfulness will help you stand out. 5. Play. Don't be too serious on a date. Infuse some kind of playfulness into your date. Have fun. Be silly. Make a joke. Humor is a great tool to create a sense of play. Lots of laughter is a good thing for a first date. It creates more bonding, less stress, and an improved chance of a second date. 6. Skip the small talk. We form stronger connections with each other when we ask questions. Ury advised that we skip small talks. You know what small talk is? Like asking the person about how their day went, what happened at work, and lots more. Questions allow people to reveal personal details about themselves, which is a great way for forming close bonds. Because of this, the kind of questions you ask matter. Stand out by entering a date in the middle of things, rather than at the beginning. When you walk into a date, instead of starting with the awkward "So, how's your day going?" or "Where do you live?" jump right into the middle of things. You'll never guess what happened on my way over here. By skipping the getting to know you small talk and diving straight into the type of conversation that friends might have, you take a shortcut to intimacy. Of course, the conversation may reverse. You'll eventually cover how your day is going, where you live, and so on. But at least you will have dipped your toes into the waters of real conversation. Another great approach is soliciting advice. You can ask about a real thing that's going on in your life. Also, asking questions is only half the equation. You need to actually listen to the answers too. 7. Be interested, not interesting. Be careful not to go endlessly talking about yourself and your achievements. Good dates are about connecting with another person, not showing off. You can become a better conversationalist by learning to give support responses rather than shift responses. Support responses indicate that you're invested in their story and want to hear more. They make your date feel appreciated and amplify the connection between the two of you. 8. Limit phone use. When on a date, try as much as you can to keep your phones out of sight. A phone in sight decreases the quality of the conversation. 9. End on a high note. People usually remember what happens at the end of an event than at the middle. This is because of a phenomenon called the peak-end rule. When assessing an experience, people judge it largely on how they felt at the most intense moment and at the end. You can practice this by giving the person a meaningful compliment before you go your separate ways. 10. Use the post-date 8 to shift to the experiential mindset. Ury has what she calls the post-date 8, which are a set of questions to answer after a date in order to be able to evaluate the date properly. The post-date 8. 1. What side of me did they bring out? 2. How did my body feel during the date? 3. Do I feel more energized or de-energized than I did before the date? 4. Is there something about them I'm curious about? 5. Did they make me laugh? 6. Did I feel heard? 7. Did I feel attractive in their presence? 8. Did I feel captivated, bored, or something in between? Chapter 11. Fuck the spark. In this chapter, Ury talks about the myth of instant chemistry and how to debunk this myth. Our obsession with the spark is one of the most pervasive and dangerous ideas in dating. She went ahead to burst some of these myths about the spark. Myth 1. When you meet the right person, you'll feel instant fireworks. The truth is, instant chemistry is often absent at the beginning of a relationship. Good sex and chemistry can build over time. Love at first sight is pretty rare. That's because the more we see something, the more we like it. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. Exposure breeds familiarity. We're attracted to familiar things and people. The spark can grow. When we first meet people, we evaluate them on their mate value, their overall attractiveness, and how they carry themselves. As we get to know and share experiences with them, we discover their unique value, who they are on the inside. And we all fall victim to evaluating people based on how attractive they look. The reason is because the face is often the first thing we notice about a person. The importance of mate value disappears over time. What matters is how you feel about someone as you get to know them. Myth 2. The spark is always a good thing. The truth is that it's not. Some people are just really good at making a lot of people feel a spark, especially if they're really attractive. Also, we often confuse anxiety for chemistry. Stop believing that if a person doesn't give you butterflies, it must not be love. It's still love, just not the anxious kind. Myth 3. If you have a spark, the relationship is viable. Even if the spark leads to a long-term relationship, it might not be enough to keep the relationship going. There are several stories of couples who stayed together years longer than they should have, all because of the spark. As she advised, don't pursue the wrong relationship because you met the right way. Ditch the spark for the slow burn. Stop using the spark as your first date indicator. Stop optimizing for that exciting feeling and focus on what matters, like loyalty, kindness, and how the other person makes you feel. Ditch the spark and go for someone who may not be particularly charming upon your first meeting, but would make a great long-term partner. Chapter 12. Go on the second date. In this chapter, Ury takes the reader through how to decide if you should see someone again. It's very easy to dwell on people's flaws after meeting them on a first date, but it's important we learn not to dwell on people's flaws, but rather look at their best qualities. Relationship expert Helen Fisher believes our brains have developed a negativity bias. This is why we are likely to remember a person's bad qualities most clearly after a date. For example, if someone arrives late to a date, we see them as selfish instead of assuming they hit traffic. In your dating life, train yourself to see the positives. Harness the power of defaults. Dozens of behavioral science experiments demonstrate how defaults, or preset options that require no action, impact our behavior. Why not set a default that you'll go on the second date? It's better to go on a second or third date with somebody and then find out that they're not a good fit than to rule out potential matches because of an initial impression that's vulnerable to all types of cognitive biases. PPPs, permissible pet peeves. Stop confusing pet peeves with deal breakers. Prioritize what actually matters long term. A pet peeve is a minor thing that an individual finds particularly annoying, perhaps more than other people do. A permissible pet peeve is a preference that feels like a deal breaker, but is really just a pet peeve. Then a deal breaker is a genuine reason not to date someone. How many dates do I need to go on before I call it? It's left to you. Take a look at what unfolds when you two hang out. Do you enjoy spending time with this person? Do they make you happy? Do you like who you are with them? Do you want to kiss them? Is your interest in them growing, waning, or just kind of trudging along? If your date is rude or disrespectful to you or anyone else, don't see that person again. Likewise, too, if your date made you feel uncomfortable, anxious, or sad. Make your decision based on this feedback. Don't you dare ghost. Ury says she has interviewed dozens of people about their ghosting habits. Here's what she found. People ghost because, I don't know how to explain why I don't want to see them again. It's uncomfortable to reject people. It's less hurtful to just disappear than to straight out reject someone. People often ghost because they think they're avoiding an awkward situation and protecting that person's feelings. When people ghost, they think they're taking the easy path for themselves. But they're wrong. Rejection do and don'ts. 1. Be polite. 2. Be clear. You can use some combination of I don't think we're a romantic fit or I don't think we're the right match. 3. Make it short and sweet. You're writing a polite heads-up note, not a manifesto on the perils of modern dating. Don'ts. 1. Say you want to be friends if you don't mean it. Someone might take you up on it, and if you're not genuine about that, it will just hurt more. 2. Criticize the person or give feedback. That's unsolicited, and it's not your place to judge. 3. Get into a long back and forth if they want more details. It's nice to be clear, but you don't owe them a drawn-out conversation. Section 3. Getting serious. In this section, the author wrote about how to make major decisions like when to move in together. She also wrote on how to know when to end a relationship and how to know when to tie the knot and things to do before tying the knot. She ended the section by emphasizing the importance of being intentional about your love life. Chapter 13. Decide, don't slide. In this chapter, Ury wrote extensively on how to consciously navigate relationship milestones. All areas of life present decision points. Relationships in particular are full of decision points. Decision points are opportunities to pause, take a breath, and reflect on what we're doing. We can take inventory of our lives and strategize about our next move. This allows us to make better, more thoughtful decisions. Psychologists describe 2 ways couples transition into the next stage of a relationship: deciding or sliding. Deciding means making intentional choices about relationship transitions, like becoming exclusive. Sliding entails slipping into the next stage without giving it much thought. This distinction matters. The National Marriage Project, an annual report on American marriages conducted by researchers at the University of Virginia, found that couples who made a conscious choice to advance to the next stage of their relationship enjoyed higher quality marriages than those who slid into the next stage. Researchers from the University of Louisville and the University of Denver found that individuals who tend to slide through relationship milestones feel less dedicated to their partners and engage in more extramarital affairs. Sliding through decision points can put a relationship at risk. Define the relationship, DTR. Always define your relationship. Have the DTR, define the relationship, or the woo-woo, what's up with us, talk. The DTR talk is an essential decision point. It's a chance to discuss where you are and where you're headed. If someone doesn't take you seriously as a potential partner, wouldn't you rather know that sooner than later? Try an opener like, I feel awkward bringing this up, but, or it's always hard to ask this, but obviously you could just straight up ask, are we dating? If that feels too direct, one technique is to say you're confused about how to refer to this person in the presence of others. For example, my friends are asking me what we are. What should I tell them? Or, how should I introduce you tonight when we meet my coworkers? You may not get the response you want. Remember, this is a conversation, not a negotiation. Respect what the other person says. Moving in together. While the U.S. population has grown by 80% since 1960, the number of unmarried couples living together before marriage has exploded by 1,500%. Pew Research Center surveyed a nationally representative panel of randomly selected U.S. adults. 2/3 of respondents between the ages of 18 to 29 agreed that couples who live together before marriage are more likely to have a successful marriage. But several studies have shown that married couples who move in together before they get married tend to be less satisfied and more likely to divorce than those who don't. This association is known as the cohabitation effect. First, cohabitation can lead to marriages and subsequent divorces that wouldn't have occurred if the couple hadn't moved in together. Second, moving in together makes it harder to be honest with yourself about the quality of the relationship because the cost of separating goes up significantly. Decide, don't slide. At times, moving in may mean one thing to one person and something completely different to the other one. But without this type of conversation, a couple may not discover the misalignment until it's too late and they've already signed the lease. Exercise. Before you move in together, set aside a weekend to answer these questions. 1. Why are we moving in together? 2. What does moving in together mean to you? 3. Where do you see this relationship going in the future? 4. Is marriage something we're considering? If so, when do you see us getting married? 5. What are your fears about living together? Chapter 14. Stop hitching and stop ditching. In this chapter, Ury expands on how to decide if you should break up a current relationship. As she wrote, people who ask me for breakup consultations usually fall into one of two categories. Some tend to stick around in relationships that aren't working. I call these people hitchers. The other group consists of people who tend to leave relationships too soon, without giving them a chance to grow. Ditchers. Ditching. Falling versus being in love. Some ditchers are motivated by their maximizer tendencies. They leave relationships too quickly because they believe they can find something better. Others ditch because of a romanticizer tendency. They expect relationships will always offer the exciting infatuation that abounds in the early stages. They end relationships too early because of a cognitive error called the transition rule. When imagining a lottery winner, we focus on that transition, going from being an average Joe to being a big winner. Now, that's a huge change. But in reality, once you're rich, you eventually adapt to your new circumstances, and sooner or later, the money doesn't seem to hold as much intrigue. Ditchers make the same mistake with love. They confuse falling in love with the state of being in love, and they expect the whole relationship to offer that initial excitement. But people adapt. Being in love is less intense than falling into it. Ditchers believe the feeling of falling in love will last forever. When they experience that shift from falling to being, they interpret it as a mark of disaster for their relationship. Over and over, they panic and leave, chasing the high of new romance. What's wrong with ditching? This behavior causes problems, and not just for the person who gets dumped. Ditchers underestimate the opportunity cost of leaving, never learning how to be a good long-term partner. If you keep dating people for 3 months and breaking up with them, you'll never get your reps in. You'll lack the experience of truly getting to know someone. And you'll continue to hold false expectations of how relationships feel over time. What can ditchers do instead? If you want to be in a long-term relationship, eventually you have to commit to someone and give it a try. Hitchers. While ditchers can't figure out how to stay in relationships, hitchers struggle to leave them. Wardrobe test. It's a technique the author developed while conducting research on breakups. As she wrote, of all the probing questions I ask, it's the one that seems to help most. Exercise. Take the wardrobe test. If your partner was a piece of clothing that you own, what piece of clothing would they be? The question is abstract and absurd enough that it allows people to reveal their true feelings. Some people say their partner is a warm coat or a snuggly sweater. To me, this suggests that they find their partner very supportive. Why hitchers stick around. There are several cognitive biases that help explain why hitchers stay in relationships too long. Sunk cost fallacy keeps hitchers in relationships. Hitchers are also impacted by loss aversion. Behavioral economists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman explained that losses loom larger than gains. Because of loss aversion, we experience twice as much psychological pain from losing as we experience pleasure from gaining. In other words, for example, to feel the intensity of losing $100, you'd have to gain $200. In dating, this bias makes us hold on to a bad relationship. We're more terrified of the potential loss of our partner than intrigued by the potential gain of the person we could date instead. The problem with hitching breaking up is a major decision, with major consequences, a decision you might be tempted to delay. But what you don't realize is that by staying in the relationship, you are already making a decision. Like ditchers, hitchers underestimate opportunity cost. If you're planning on ending the relationship, every day you wait, you're wasting their time too. If you're a man, you should be especially sensitive if you're dating a woman who is hoping to give birth to her own kids. You're underestimating her opportunity cost of being with you. The longer you put off breaking up with her, the less time she has to find a new partner and build a family. The kindest thing is to give her a clear answer so she can move on and find someone else. Should I stay or should I go? Below is a series of questions she gave that will help you decide whether to end it or mend it. 1. Take the wardrobe test. If your partner were a piece of clothing that you own, something in your closet, what piece of clothing would they be? Use this answer to understand how you view your partner and the relationship. If your answer is a piece of outerwear, like a sweater or jacket that keeps you warm, or a favorite shirt, pair of pants, or shoes, it's a great answer. There's problem if your item involves something that's worn out, itchy, or uncomfortable, or something you don't want to be seen wearing in public. 2. Are there extenuating circumstances going on in your partner's life right now, like a new job or a sick parent, that make it hard for them to show up for you the way you want them to? Is it possible that things will go back to normal when this situation is resolved? 3. Have you tried to fix things and given feedback? 4. What are your expectations of a long-term relationship? Are they realistic? 5. Finally, it's time to look at who you've been in the relationship. You are half of the dynamic. Are you bringing your best self to the partnership? Are you doing everything you can on your end to make it work? Can you work on being a more generous, present partner? Ask a trusted friend or family member. Our friends and family can see things that we're blind to. That's because we're infatuated with our partners during the first 2 to 3 years we're together, which turns us into poor judges of our own relationships. But choose your advisor wisely. This should be someone who knows you and your partner well, has your best interests at heart, and is good at helping you think through decisions. What to do next? If you're a ditcher who has given this relationship a chance and it just isn't working, leave the relationship. Maybe this just isn't the person for you, and that's okay. If you're a ditcher or a hitcher who hasn't given the relationship a real chance, for example, you haven't brought your best self to it, stay in the relationship and see what happens when you're patient and invested. It's important to recognize that often a low point isn't a breaking or breakup point. If you're a hitcher who has given this relationship a chance and it just isn't working, leave the relationship. It's going to be painful for both of you, but it's time to move on. Chapter 15. Make a breakup plan. Sometimes it's necessary that a relationship that isn't working ends. And in this chapter, Ury goes in depth to show the reader how to end a relationship the right way. She emphasized that this is for people who are in a relationship but aren't married and don't have kids together. If you've been out on only a few dates, the steps outlined below will be overkill. Step 1. Record your reasons for wanting the breakup. In a notebook, write yourself a letter explaining why you're making the decision to break up the relationship. Exercise. Record your reasons for the breakup. Step 2. Make a plan. Set a deadline that's within the next 2 weeks. It's enough time to prepare and to ride that motivation wave, but not enough time to chicken out. Exercise. Set a clear deadline. I commit to having this conversation by ___________. Once you've set your deadline, it's time to make a more specific plan for when and where you'll have the breakup conversation. Choose a quiet location, preferably your home or your partner's. Don't break up with someone in public. Consider your timing. Don't break up with someone the day before they have to take a big exam or give a presentation or interview for a new job. Once you've decided when and where you'll initiate the breakup, you want to make a plan for what you're going to say. How do you want to start? Ury suggests you emphasize that you've given this decision deep consideration and you want to end the relationship. Be compassionate, but direct. You could say something like, I really care about you, and I don't want to hurt you, but I think we need to break up. We both know this relationship hasn't been working for a while. We try to make it better, but at this point, I don't think we can make the changes we need to. I want us to both find love and be happy, but I don't think this relationship is going to give us that. And if they say, what's wrong with me? Don't answer. Know that whatever you say is likely what they'll fixate on after the breakup because of something called the narrative fallacy. Our brain tries to create a cause and effect story to explain the events we witness and experience, even when that story is false. Talk for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and then end the conversation. Don't let the conversation drag on forever. Exercise. 1. What's your goal for this conversation? In other words, what does success look like? 2. What's the core message you want to communicate? 3. What tone do you want to use? What tone do you want to avoid? 4. How do you want to open the conversation? 5. What needs to be said? 6. What are your concerns about how the other person will react? 7. What will you do if that happens? 8. How do you want to close the conversation? Step 3. Create a social accountability system with a friend. Increase your chances of following through by setting up a social accountability system. With this technique, you ask others to hold you responsible to the goal you've set for yourself. If you want to take your accountability system to the next level, you can incorporate incentives. Step 4. Have the conversation, but don't have sex. Throughout the conversation, check in with both yourself and the other person to avoid flooding. This is a physical and mental state when your stress hormone rises and your body enters fight or flight mode. When we flood, we're not able to really listen or take in new information. If either of you feels like you're starting to flood, take a 20-minute timeout to calm down. Return to the conversation with your original objective in mind. Be kind but firm. Your goal is that by the end of the conversation, it's clear you've broken up. Also make plans for what you would do immediately after the breakup conversation and create an accountability system to hold you to it. Step 5. Make an immediate post-breakup plan for yourself. Don't be alone those first few nights. Feeling lonely and uncertain makes you more likely to slide back into the relationship. If you and your now ex live together, this post-breakup plan is especially important. Ask a friend if you can stay with them for at least a few days. Step 6. Create a breakup contract with your ex. Introduce the idea by saying something like, "I know this sounds ridiculous, but I think it might be helpful if we get on the same page about what we both want moving forward. Are you willing to take a look at this with me?" Step 7. Change your habits to avoid backsliding. Your breakup will likely leave a number of holes in your life. Try to fill them. If the background on your phone is a picture of the two of you, replace it. List specific moments that might be difficult for you. Then write down the people you'll contact instead of your ex. Ury calls this tech support. Step 8. Don't be the nice breakup person. The aftermath of a breakup, even if it's one you wanted, isn't easy. You might have some moments of doubt, fear, or uncertainty. Just because you initiated the breakup doesn't mean you're not in pain. The author Alain de Botton says, "There's a terrible phenomenon of the nice breakup person. We hear a lot about the horrible breakup person, but we don't hear so much about the nice person who stays around, who keeps calling you on your birthday, etc." Chapter 16. Reframe your breakup as a gain, not a loss. The framing effect is our tendency to evaluate things differently based on how they're presented. Framing is the key to getting over breakups. In fact, you can speed up your recovery process by changing your frame. For example, you can focus on all of the activities that you used to love but paused because your partner wasn't a fan. The point is that, rather than viewing the experience as a devastating loss, you can see it as a gain, something empowering that will improve your life in the long run. She gave 4 different reframes for breakup that helps her readers see that overcoming heartbreak is all about perspective. What's happening in your brain and body? A breakup is often one of the most distressing events that an individual can experience in life. A region of the brain called the nucleus accumbens lights up when we see a picture of a person we're in love with. It's the same part of the brain that's activated when a drug addict thinks about getting a hit. It's also the region of the brain affected during a breakup. Our brain undergoes the same experience during a breakup and a drug withdrawal. It's no wonder breakups are painful. One of the reasons breakups are so painful is because our brain is hypersensitive to loss. And breakups are a dramatic loss. They are the death of your imagined future with your partner. You're grieving the loss of what was, what no longer is, and what will never be. But here are 4 different reframes for breakup that will help you see that overcoming heartbreak is all about perspective. Reframe 1. Focus on the positives of the breakup. Research has shown that people who dwell on the positive aspects of their breakup reported feeling happier, wiser, more grateful, confident, comfortable, empowered, energized, optimistic, relieved, and satisfied. List 10 positive aspects of your breakup. Reframe 2. Focus on the negatives of the relationship. Research also found that those who were asked to think about the negative elements of the relationship ultimately felt less infatuated with their ex than people in the other 2 groups. Exercise. Write about the negatives of the relationship. Reframe 3. Rediscover yourself. Research also found that breakups can cause a bit of an identity crisis because so much of who we are is tied up in that relationship. Engage in activities that will help you rediscover yourself. List 3 rediscover yourself activities you'll explore this month. Keep fishing. Not everyone who leaves a relationship needs months to heal. People who initiate a breakup may have experienced negative feelings about the relationship while still in it. So, when the breakup actually happens, they don't need as much time. If you don't feel as upset as you expected after a relationship ends, don't be alarmed. You're not a heartless demon. You did the grieving while still dating, and now you're ready to move on. If you were broken up with, your timeline likely started after the relationship ended, so it makes sense that you'll take longer to heal. How do you know when you're ready to start dating? The only way to know whether you're ready to start dating is to go on an actual date. Reframe 4. See this as a chance to learn from the past and make better decisions in the future. This is very useful if you're trapped in a pattern of choosing partners who don't work out for the same reason. Don't date the same type of person over and over. Exercise. Consider what you want to do differently in future relationships. Take some time to answer the following questions. 1. Who were you in your last relationship? 2. Who do you want to be in your next one? 3. What have you learned about what truly matters in a long-term relationship? 4. Moving forward, what will you look for in a partner that you didn't prioritize this time? Exercise. Explore the deeper meaning. Take some time to answer the following questions. 1. What did you learn from this relationship? 2. What did you learn from the breakup? 3. How are you different from the person you were before this relationship? 4. What changes will you make in your life as a result of this experience? Chapter 17. Before you tie the knot, do this. Getting married is a big step, and in this chapter, Ury wrote in depth on how to decide if you should get married. Happiness and satisfaction of marriage has a tremendous impact on happiness, physical and mental health, life expectancy, wealth, and the well-being of children. We're in love. Isn't that enough? Being in love is not enough. She gave steps on how to think critically about whether you should get married. Part 1. All about me. Exercise. Answer the all about me questions. 1. Is my partner more of a prom date or a life partner? 2. Take the wardrobe test. 3. Is this someone I can grow with? 4. Do I admire this person? 5. What side of me does this person bring out? 6. Is this the person I want to share my good news with? 7. When I have a hard day at work, do I want to talk about it with my partner? 8. Do I value my partner's advice? 9. Am I looking forward to building a future with this person? 10. Is this someone I can make tough decisions with? 11. Do we communicate well and fight productively? Part 2. All about us. Your goal, throughout these conversations, is to stay curious. Discover what your partner wants and understand if this aligns with what you want. Exercise. Answer the all about us questions. Conversation 1. The past 1. What are 3 moments about your past that you feel define you? 2. How do you think your childhood affects who you are today? 3. Did your parents fight? What are your fears around relationship conflict? 4. What traditions from your family do you want to carry on in our family? 5. How did your family talk or not talk about sex when you were growing up? 6. What did money represent in your family? 7. What baggage from your family do you want to leave in the past? Conversation 2. The present. Do you feel comfortable talking to me as things come up? Is there anything about our communication style that you want to work on? Do you feel like you can be yourself in a relationship? Why or why not? What changes would you like to make to our relationship? How well do you think we handle conflict? What's your favorite ritual that we do together? What's something you wish we did more together? How well do you feel like I know your friends and family? How often would you like to be having sex? How could our sex life be better? What can I do to improve it? What's something you've always wanted to try but have been afraid to ask for? How often do you think about money? Let's talk openly about our finances. Do you have student loans? Credit card debt? Is my debt your debt? Conversation 3. The future. Where do you want to live in the future? 2. Do you want to have kids? If yes, how many? When? If we can't conceive on our own, what other options would we consider? Adoption? Surrogacy? 3. What are your expectations around splitting childcare and housework duties? 4. How often do you want to see your family? What role do you want religion or spirituality play in our lives? 6. Do you want to discuss a prenup? What fears does that bring up for you? 7. How do you expect to split finances in the future? 8. Do you expect you'll always want to work? 9. What happens if one of us wants to take time off? X. If I were considering a big purchase, at what point would you want me to call you? 11. What are your long-term financial goals? 12. What are you most looking forward to in the future? 13. What is a dream of yours for the future? How can I help you achieve it? 14. What's the most you'd spend on a car? A couch? A pair of shoes? Chapter 18. Intentional love. One of the things that Ury set out to do with the book was to help her readers approach the subject of love intentionally. And in this chapter, she wrote about how to build love relationships that last. As she wrote, great relationships are created, not discovered. You can form a lasting bond by putting in the work. The opportunity is yours to build the relationship of your dreams. Creating a relationship that changes with the people in it. Even if you have a strong relationship today, your relationship may fail if you don't adapt. People's life can take an unpredictable course anytime. Creating a relationship that can evolve is the key to making it last. The relationship contract. This is a non-legally binding, mutually agreed upon document that helps couples create a shared vision for their relationship. These agreements catalyze conversations that couples should have periodically to figure out what they want out of their relationship. They should address questions like, how often do we want to see our extended families? How do we split our bills? Is sex important to us? Are we monogamous? And how do we define monogamy? Psychologists Jesse Owen, Galena Rhodes, and Scott Stanley observe that couples who take the time to talk through big decisions are happier than those who don't. The focus in your relationship should not be transactional. I'll do the laundry if you'll do the dishes. But rather, value-based, commit to supporting each other's dreams and making the sacrifices necessary to enable those dreams. On the first page of the contract, the couple should set a specific date in the future when they'll revisit the agreement. On that date, they should give each other feedback on how they're doing. The check-in ritual. As Esther Pearl wrote, the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. Relationships are your story. Write well and edit often. It's important to have a weekly check-in ritual, a short conversation in which you and your partner discuss what's on your mind. Exercise. Design your own check-in ritual. Sit with your partner and answer these questions together. 1. When do you want to have this weekly ritual? 2. Where do you want your check-in to take place? 3. What questions do you want to ask each other each week? 4. How can you make this ritual special? 5. What will you do to check in if you're not physically together? What's next? A world of intentional love. Strong relationships don't create themselves. They are built through intentional love. Be very intentional about your love life so that it's an adventure, not an accident. In the end, make sure you designed your life, you held yourself accountable, you were honest with yourself, and most important, you course-corrected when you had to. You didn't live someone else's idea of life, you lived yours.